I guess this microphone here will be just fine. I don't plan on leaving the pulpit, I don't think. Acts chapter 2, and I'd like to start reading in verse number 42. Listen to this as I read for us this morning. They were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and many wonders and signs were taking place through the apostles. And all those who had believed were together. They had all things in common. And they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing them with all, as anyone might have need. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. Lord, open our eyes this morning. Help us to see what you would have us see from this text. And help us as we talk about our travels and as we talk about a church and as we try to compare how this relates to this scripture. Help us as a church to learn from it. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, may I say it to you as I'm taken back by this Christmas theme. I do know that it's 164 days until Christmas. I do keep up with that. But I was really, blessed, humbled by the thoughtfulness that you have shown. It began Tuesday morning, Tuesday as I started work, and I walk into my office, and a couple of you have decorated my office with like a Santa's workshop theme. And I'm going to leave it up for a while, even though it blocks my phone, my calculator, my everything. I just walk in there and start being happy. So I'm going to leave that up. Well, I didn't know that our administrative assistant, Holly, she handed me a bulletin Friday, and of course, if I had seen anything related to Christmas, I would have, what? Christmas? And then I got here this morning, and Austin was wearing a Santa's hat. And I said, Austin, you're not Santa, I am Santa. And I saw the little Christmas tree, and the tables were set up, but that was for VBS. And I thought, what are they doing with a Christmas tree for VBS? So then people came in and started bringing their stuff. So anyway, all I can say is thank you, thank you, thank you. Before I share any thoughts with you about our passage, this is not going to be an exposition. This is going to be some stories that I want to tell you, some things we learned, some things about our trip. For if you're visiting and you don't know anything about this, we've been gone for 6 weeks on a study sabbatical in Siena, Italy. And Siena is a beautiful little town in Tuscany, a very simple town, a very quiet town. And you allowed us to go. 2 years ago, I knew in 2 years at that time we would be celebrating 30 years here, Lord willing, and I asked the elders at that time if they would allow me to have a study sabbatical. I originally asked for a 2-semester study sabbatical, which looking back, and they thought it was too long, and I agree. I didn't then, but that would have been too long. But they gave me a month away and then allowed me to take a couple of weeks vacation to extend it to 6 weeks so I could have some study time. And I did have an incredible study time. I chose this time of the year to do this because, number one, it's a slow time of the year for us as a church. The elders agreed this would be the better time to do it because of vacations and all of that kind of thing. So we chose it for that reason. Another reason why Connie would turn 60 during that period of time, and I thought how wonderful it would be for us to celebrate her 60th birthday in Italy. And then our 40th wedding anniversary would also fall within that time frame. So we would just be able to have everything happen sort of together, and it just seemed perfect. And then there's the Il Palio. Well, the Il Palio, you just need to Google it, but the Il Palio is something that I've wanted to attend for years and years and years. Matter of fact, in my office, I've had for at least a dozen years a big picture of the horse race that happens in Siena. And it's quite historical, goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And so this time frame just put us in to be able to get as much as what we could. So with 2 years of planning and 2 years of saving, we were off to a great start. And Paul Kirkwood took us to the airport. And on the way to the airport, I got this text. And this was from our Italian host, who we had booked our 42 days with. Hey, Tom, we had a very big problem. The floor of the penthouse over your apartment collapsed into the apartment itself. Fortunately, no one was inside 1 hour ago when it happened. But you can't stay there, as there is no roof and it is not safe. We don't know when it will be repaired, but I think it will take a lot of days. We have another available apartment with the same features, central as well, even though not in the Del Campo Piazza where we wanted to be. That's where the horse race runs, in the piazza, which means square, the town square. And our apartment was right inside the town square in a 1,000-year-old building. Really something. But anyway, she said, you're not exactly in Piazza del Campo. Yeah, right. Here's the address. I hope this solution will work for you. Well, we do try. I do try to practice what I preach. I don't always. I try to. But to walk in faith, to accept what happens. I remember thinking in that car, what if we'd been in that apartment? I mean, what if we just got there and unpacked our 6 weeks worth of luggage and everything and made up house and then the ceiling collapsed? What would happen then? What if I was in there studying and the roof fell in and I was injured, or Connie or both of us? Injury or loss of life? It seemed to us that God had provided already another way. I mean, my dream for us that I had worked on, prayed about, put together, was to live inside the square, the town square. Our host, her name was Erica. She'd been fully vetted by a friend of mine who lives in Milan and had friends who also live in Siena. So I knew that we could trust her, even sight unseen. If she says this apartment is good, then we'll accept it. So we did. We arrived. Our driver picked us up at the airport. Siena is only like a 40-minute drive from Florence, Italy. If some of you know Italy and where things are, Florence is here, Rome is here, and Siena's kind of here. So he had heard already, he'd heard about the cave-in of the apartment. And he was telling us, glad that none of us were injured. Well, we arrived after a very, very long day and night of travel. We were weary, road weary, flight weary, ready to get in and get a shower. And he parks the car at the foot of the gate. Siena has a historical center that has a wall around it. In other words, the entire place where we lived for these 40 days was a walled-in city. The problem is they don't allow cars in there unless you're a taxi cab or if you have a permit. This driver was neither. So we park at the gate, and I'm wondering, where's our apartment? And he said, oh, it's just up there. Well, guys, 4 50-pound suitcases, going up an incline of cobble street roads that will give you feet and ankle and knee trouble, I assure you. We started lugging these suitcases. And what I had put together as a good faith statement of, okay, God, we'll accept whatever you've allowed, we'll accept it. Oh, it started leaving me quick. And it seemed like it was over a half a mile up, curves, little narrow places, and finally we get to where we're going, and I'm just going, frazzle, frazzle. What are we doing? We get there, and there's this little, what I call a hobbit door, a little oval door with a doorknob right in the middle of it. And I'm thinking, what is behind that door? You could hardly get your suitcase through the door. So we're here. And then the hammer fell. He opens the door, and all I can see are stairs. 6 flights of narrow stairs, not wide enough for you and your suitcase unless your suitcase is behind you. I'm telling you guys, I wasn't proud of myself that day. We made it finally to the top, me being the very last one, huffing and puffing and all of the things you can imagine. I remember feeling, why are you laughing? I remember feeling so frustrated at this point. I really struggled with accepting all the hard work that I had prepared. All the things that I had done, all the homework I had done, all the things for this to happen. And I thought, oh my, if we open this apartment door and it's a disaster, I'm going home. And to our surprise, we opened the door, and it's a very, very nice, comfortable, safe and sound apartment with good air conditioning, which is a premium over there. You have to make sure if you're booking a place that you ask for it, because most places don't have it. And it gets very hot. So we're exhausted, and if any of you have traveled much, some of you have, I know, when you travel to a foreign place and you get there in the morning, the thing that you have to do is not go to sleep. You have to fight it all day long, and to make sure that your body clock gets established for nighttime. Otherwise, if you go in and you take a nap and go to sleep, your body's confused, and then at night you'll wake up at 2 a.m. or something. So we got in, we got our shower. We wanted to see where we were in relationship to the square, the piazza, the Del Campo. And so off we went. These thoughts went through my head as I was trying to understand what God was up to. I know that I'm overweight and obviously out of shape. As a personal trainer, Izzy Mendelbaum would say, drop your purse, honey, because a butterball like you better buy a ticket to board the pain train. And that is exactly what we did. Every day, multiple times a day, 6 flights up, 6 flights down. I learned coming down is easier than going up. And we had these grandiose plans of renting Connie a scooter or a bicycle or something, till you get there and forgotten that everything's an incline. It would have been horrible to do that. But we set out, and for 6 weeks, hundreds of steps, many, many miles. Finally, I adjusted. Connie was already adjusted. Well, the first thing I wanted Connie to see was the location of where our apartment would have been. So we go to the piazza, and I wanted to peek my head in the door to kind of see, are they working on it? What is it? I mean, I just wanted to see it, and the door was locked. This big old door unlike the little hobbit door that we entered in every day. I'm thankful for that door, but the big door would have been nicer. But it had these Italian bulletins stapled to them. And of course, I don't read Italian. And I didn't know what they were, but I assumed they were building permits or construction permits or something, because obviously they're going to have to get in here and redo this apartment. So anyway, day by day we would go by, the door would be closed, door would be closed. And one day I was out by myself and someone was getting ready to enter the door. And so I thought, I'm going to sneak in behind them. And I did. And so I went in, and inside this big, massive, wide, marbled staircase were several apartments and an office or two. And so I thought, I would love to get in that apartment, and I would like to see just what happened in there. And then it kind of dawned on me that, wait a minute, we're on the top floor. There is no penthouse above us. There's no apartment above us. There must be something lost in translation when she told me that the penthouse above us, where the floor or ceiling had collapsed, made me even more want to see it. I thought, I'll wait for the cleaning lady. That's what I'll do. So I waited for a little while, just sort of looking around, wondering, there's several apartments there. A cleaning lady's going to come in. Surely then I'll just follow her right in. But then I thought, no, there's not going to be a cleaning lady because the apartment's been shut down. So then I thought, well, there's some construction stuff here, and there was this big compressor and hose going up, and I thought, I know they're working, though I didn't see them or hear them. I thought, I'll just wait maybe till the door opens. I waited a while and nothing. And then I thought, I had this bright idea, the private investigator that I think I could have been. I thought, I know the address and I know the man's name. I wonder if he's on Facebook, the owner. So I go to Facebook, I look up the address, and there it is. There it is, and there he is, Massimo. And Massimo has his apartment called the Bright Apartment Del Campo on Facebook. You can go see it and see what it looks like. And I thought, that's strange that he's still got that apartment up on Facebook. So I sent him a message and I said, we booked this place and I'm sorry for your loss and blah, 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 blah. I would really like to see it. No answer. The next day I thought, well, I'm going to send him a message again. And this time I'm going to send it, I'm not going to private message, I'm going to put it on his Facebook post. Well, I got an immediate response. And this man spoke no English, could understand no English, but he had an assistant, a helper, that would do that for him and would check his Facebook for any translation. So I got an immediate answer back, and I played a little bit of investigative. Asked him if I could rent the place first, is what I did the second time. He said, sure. When would you like to see it? I said, tomorrow at 1 o'clock? Tomorrow it is. So me and Connie got our stuff ready, her phone ready to record and all this stuff. We go up to this apartment. They meet us outside these big doors and let us in. We walk up there. He opens a door, and yep, just like the pictures, beautiful, beautiful apartment. And I'm thinking, what has happened here? I can't believe this. I mean, we talked to them and they told us about, this girl last August had come to us wanting to book this for 42 days and we told her no. And so he said, we don't know anything about it. When I started looking at all the paperwork, there was a contract that I filled out with her and with them, but it wasn't signed by the owner. It was signed by her boyfriend. Well, the first thought after the recognition that, okay, we've been duped here, we've been taken, the first thought I had was what Joseph said when his brothers took so advantage of him and treated him so harshly. He said, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. I kept coming back to that, thinking about that. I did, by the way, the very last day we were there with some Italian friends that we'd met, I did write up a letter, and he translated it into Italian, and we took it to the authorities, and they were very glad to get it because they're very proud of their tourism. And so this person probably will have a little bit of a surprise from them. You might be wondering, what did we do the whole time, the 42 days that we were there? My day started out in the morning, just a very quiet morning. We had breakfast there, and I would start my study, and I took 5 courses from Hillsdale College. I know some of you are familiar with Hillsdale, but it is a wonderful opportunity. I've made donations to them in the past, and you can take courses, very good courses. I took C.S. Lewis, Winston Churchill, Aristotle's Ethics, World War II, and Mark Twain. All subjects that, who would ever have time to do that on your own? And then I also did a Greek grammar course with Bill Mounts to just polish up what has been my love all these years. For 40 days, every morning, I did this, except on Wednesdays. And Wednesdays was a market day where we would leave early and we would go to the market and spend until lunch there. Connie, she was busy as well, exploring all of these streets up and down and everywhere, in and out. She joined Gold's Gym, and she had a place to work out every day. Not that the workout was enough, climbing these inclines. And a real blessing for her was we enrolled her into 6 weeks worth of cooking school there, and had a wonderful opportunity to meet this family, this Italian family, and this Pakistani assistant chef that I believe, folks, that may be the whole purpose for our trip. As we tell you from time to time when we travel, when we go places, we're always asking God to show us what divine appointment could be there for us, what we could do to establish Christ wherever we go. And this young man, his name is Tusif, we really believe, we both believe that God's going to do a work through that. Well, also, an interesting footnote to all of this, the police station was right next to our church, a church that we found as soon as we got there. This church is why I've come to this text this morning and why I've entitled this sermon, Finding Together. Because that's exactly what we found when we walked into this little church. This church was from its history, a Waldensian church. The Waldensians were a pre-Protestant Reformation church, pre-Reformation church, who holds to the same beliefs mostly that we do. It's a very, very small church, 20, 30 people. And it was from our 6 weeks of attending there and getting to know them and being in a home or two and just being together with them that I came to this passage and I revisited it in Acts chapter 2. And this is what I want to say to you this morning. Church is not an independent endeavor. We're created for relationships. Church is not an independent endeavor. We're created for relationships, spiritual ones. Now, in our text this morning from verse 42 and on, I want you to notice the plural verbs, pronouns, and adjectives. Look at all the plurals. Verse 42, they, themselves, fellowship, which implies togetherness. Verse 43, everyone. Verse 44, all those were together, and they began selling their property and possessions. Now, that's a customary imperfect in the grammar of this text, and you could translate that from time to time they sold their possessions in order to meet needs. It wasn't that everybody went out and just sold their stuff. No, as the need arose, the people responded with sacrifice. And they were sharing them with all. And day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple, breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. Do you know what relationships often do? You've experienced it. Sometimes relationships create tension. Sometimes tension even in the church. Sometimes relationship create sparks and disagreements. But don't you love the genius of our Lord in putting these band of disciples together? Imagine a Matthew and a Simon the Zealot sitting in the same row. Matthew was a tax collector. He worked for Rome. He was a traitor to the Jews. Simon the Zealot was zealous for the Jews. And they hated the Roman occupation and the Roman bondage. God very precisely put Simon the Zealot and Matthew in the same band of disciples. They're going to have to work through some things, you think? And then you've got some of the others here. You've got James and John, who seem to have a temper problem, and you place those guys with a meek and mild-mannered Andrew. Well, you're going to have to work through some of these differences. Here you got a courageous and outspoken Peter with a doubting and often disappearing Thomas. So here you have this collection of people together in relationships. It's because finding together, finding each other, relationships are the forge of our growth and our maturity. Here in this church, just think of this church like this forge, that the relationships that we have here, many of you you've grown together, you're forging together, and even now we're looking forward to the next leg of our ministry here, however long it might be. We knew when we asked for this sabbatical that the thing on our minds was going to be, okay, Lord, we've been here 30 years. That's, some would say, too long. But how are we going to finish? We want our last leg to be a very strong and healthy leg of ministry here. Finding together is the most wonderful thing we can experience in this church together. You think about the book of Genesis. Genesis is the foundation of our entire Bible. You take the book of Genesis out of the Bible and you've taken the foundation away from God as creator, God as the establisher of our relationships. But in the book of Genesis, you have one chapter that all God gives us, one chapter of the creation of the universe, and 49 chapters about relationships. Think about it. We're much more important than stars. And the finding together in a church, just like we have found here, is such a wonderful thing illustrated in this early church. Now, I read this somewhere that when people leave the church and return for whatever reason, they leave the church on one reason and somewhere down the pike they return. Some of the principal reasons why they return are their children, kids programs, things that they really miss and they want to have. It brings them back around. And sometimes in the process of the children's programs, parents say, you know what, let's get back in church. Grandkids can be a huge reason why people get back involved in the church and find together again and how important it is. Personal tragedy brings us back because whenever we go through a tragedy, a personal tragedy, we need each other. We really need each other. Weddings and funerals, I've had people to return to church because of attending a funeral and hearing a sermon and saying, you know what, I just need to get back. I need to get back in church. You know what? Over these past 42 days, we have really Marco Polo'd our kids. And some of you don't have a clue what that is. But it's like a program, Skype or FaceTime. It's where you can talk abroad without cost. You can even call. If you don't have that app on your phone, don't download it now, please. But Marco Polo, it's a wonderful thing to have. But nothing replaces being together, right? We love that, being able to see their faces and hear their voices and know what's going on. But man, when we can walk into the same room with them, and I see some of you, and I'll just tell you this, it just makes me so jealous in a good way, that I see you after church, you're leaving, and your grandkids are holding on to you, and I know what you're talking about. You're talking about where we're going to go eat or what's going to happen next. We miss that. But that's finding together in a smaller way here. Now let me talk to you about this finding together as it relates to this church in Italy. And I think that you will be pleased about this. It was very important for us to find a church. We were going to be there those weeks, and we started looking, and I had looked before. Matter of fact, I think I told you from the pulpit, I had emailed a few of the bishops in that area. Now, I'm not Catholic, and I didn't really want to go to a Catholic or Episcopal church, but I was going to find somewhere on the Lord's Day to assemble. And this one bishop texted me back, and he said, I've got 3 churches, one in Siena, one in Bologna, and one in Florence. And he said, we'd love to have you speak for us one time. But nothing really opened up. Our Italian missionaries that we support in Genova on the Italian, I guess you'd call it the Italian Riviera, the Italian coast, he's there. But during the time that we were in Italy, he was here. So we weren't able to make a connection there, and we were hoping to do that. But we were walking one day, and Connie, I think Connie's the one who spotted it. And she said, well, there's a church, and it says evangelical. And we thought, well, let's find out. So Sunday morning we go, and we're thinking, okay, we're going to get there at 10:30, and surely that'll be a pretty safe time. Well, we waited. 10:30, 10:45, 10:50, 10:55, 10:59, 11 o'clock, and one person shows up, 11 o'clock. We're thinking, well, it's a good sign. And it was a African-American person. We thought, well, I don't care if it's an African-American church or not. It's church, and we want to be somewhere. And so a few more assembled, and we didn't know what we were getting into. And then other people started coming, about 20 people, 25 people. And we go in, and of course it's all in Italian, and we don't understand Italian. I've asked for the gift of tongues for that very reason, so that I could understand the language, which is the whole purpose for that. But it's just not something that God has a purpose in now, in my opinion. But anyway, that's another sermon. So, but we were there. And you know what happens at 12 o'clock? On the nose, every Sunday at 12 o'clock, the same thing happened. She's right in the middle of the sermon. It wouldn't have mattered. But the bells started ringing all over Siena. Big chapel bells. And I'm thinking, you guys would have a wonderful time with that. You would love it, because it would let me know that it's 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock. And I remember thinking about how funny that was. And they go over quite a bit over. They go to about 12:30. But this church was a wonderful example, a mix of black, white, brown, yellow, and people that were finding together. We watched them, and they were loving on each other, and they were very, very careful to come back to us. And there was 1 or 2 people in the church that could understand some English, and they would go get the person and bring them to us and give us a greeting, and they wanted to make sure that we got a greeting in English. And so it truly was a highlight of our trip. And I want to tell you this. Somebody, the Sunday before we left, put an envelope with some money in it under my office door. I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're here today or not. But that's very special. And we took that money, and we took a portion of that money and made a donation to that church in your honor, whoever you are, and just prayed that God would multiply this gift for you and bless you for that. The church also did something I think you'll be very, very happy about, because any of you that have contributed to this church in any way, financial contributions, I believe that anything that the church does and all the missions that we support and everything else, I think everybody is blessed from that. Well, we noticed that their pipe organ, a small pipe organ, sort of an ancient one, but it was missing several notes. And the one person there that could speak some English was the organist. He was 42 or 43 years old. He'd been there over 20 years. And I went down and I had him to show me what's wrong with the pipe organ. And he told me, and I said, well, can it be repaired? He says, oh, yeah. And I said, well, what would it cost? Because I know you as a church would want to do this within reason. I mean, if it's $20,000, then maybe we might ought to stop and think about it. But if it's something within reason, wouldn't you want to participate in repairing this? Of course you would. I know your heart. So I said, let's get an estimate. Would you get an estimate? And would you be able to give that to me so I can take back to our church? And I can talk to our church about making that repair. And this church is poor. Guys, I just can't explain to you how poor they are as a church. So we got the estimate back, and it just put a big grin on my face, because I had already prayed, Lord, if it's up to this amount, we're going to repair this for them and say, God bless you, from a sister church. And so we took care of that, and they're going to send us a video whenever that repair is put into place. And all of that is based upon this body being so generous and just being able to celebrate with them. We experienced in this passage, they talk about the breaking of bread. It says, day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple, from breaking bread from house to house. They were taking their meals together with gladness. Guys, this is like a storybook. We were invited over to a home after Sunday lunch, and I got to tell you this. I share some of this with you not to offend you in any way. I hope you're not offended by this, but just tell you just exactly how it happened. The first Sunday we were there, they had which is uncommon for them, but the African Americans that had assembled at the church early were a singing group that were college students there in Siena. And Siena has many university satellites, and so they were a singing group. So as a result, after the service, they had a potluck, like a potluck. And so we thought, oh man, now this is cool. I hope we get invited. And so anyway, the people, of course, they came back and said, please stay with us. And well, okay, So we go next door, and here's this, I'd call him the main deacon of the church. And I noticed him throughout the time. He was the one that was taking care of things. If something, like once there was a blinking light, and he got up immediately. He disappeared, and he went and took care of that. And another time something else happened. People didn't have their hymn book, and he scuffled around. And 74-year-old retired man that was just incredible. His name was Frank. But anyway, Frank comes over and he invites us over. We go over there, and there's this table, just like our tables, but you have homemade pizza. You have some Italian little things. I don't even know what you would call them. almost, I don't even know how to describe some of this stuff. The homemade breads and the vegetables and fennel. Have any of you ever had a fennel root to eat? It's the first time we've ever had it, but they really love it over there. But all kinds of different things on the table, and homemade Chianti. Now, Chianti is a grape, and that area of Tuscany is famous for its Chianti Classico. They're famous for their Chianti wine and their Chianti olive oil. So there we have, I was standing there thinking, wow, this is interesting. Boy, my church people would have a real time with this. What do we do? Well, when in Rome, when in Siena. And guys, it was so sweet. It was so balanced. It was so precious that they would share what they made in their homes, including the Chianti, and all of the other things. And we were there. But the most important thing about it was we were finding together with them without a language to bind us. We were finding together with these Italian people. Well, the next Sunday, we didn't think that there would be anything after church. There was a little thing going on. They wanted us to be a part of that. And then one Sunday, a family invited us over for lunch. Now, I don't know how to tell you this, but we just do lunch wrong here. We get to the house probably at 1 o'clock. We sit down at the table, and they bring out some bruschetta. Bruschetta is like a toast with tomato and different things on it. I'm not sure what all is on it, but it's an appetizer of sorts. Some of you have had it maybe at Olive Garden or something. And then some other kind of homemade things that the mother had made. And we sat around the table for probably 30 or 40 minutes just doing the appetizer. Just talking with one person that could understand English, relaying what Mom and Dad was saying to us, and us relaying through him. And then the first course came out. And I've tried to remember in my head, there were so many of them, what came out. But I think the first that came out was pasta. She had homemade ravioli and some pici, which pici is a homemade Sienian noodle that's a little thicker than spaghetti, but it has a special sauce. And anyway, some of that is traditional, all traditional stuff. And then we had that, and that was fantastic. And I was like, okay, I'm ready for dessert, and boy, I'm getting sleepy. And then the meat course came out, and they had lamb chops, and they had pork chops, and they had beef, and I mean, this table just kept growing. And they brought out salad. They always like to eat their green salad with the meat. I'm not sure why. We eat our salad first. They don't, not in that setting. And then after the meat, I thought, surely we're done. We're finished. I mean, I can't eat another bite. And they bring out another course. I don't even remember what it was. And there's something that they fix there, and I know this is maybe not what you expected to hear for a sermon on Sunday morning, but they bring out what's called zucchini flower. And the flower that grows on a zucchini is about this long and about this wide. They pull the flower, they lightly coat it with some real light coating, and they deep fry it. And friends, have any of you ever had it? Zucchini flower. Okay, here you go. You've learned something today. It's fantastic. And then they brought that out. And then and then it comes to dessert and coffee, and oh my goodness, we were finished about 5 o'clock maybe. But you know, guys, we sat around the table. We talked. What do we do here? We go to a fast food, we grab it, we consume it, mass consume it, so that we have time to do other things. They don't do that. They don't do that every Sunday, I know that. But every single meal that we had in a restaurant or a place like that took time. And around that table, you find together. And you don't have your cell phone out. You don't have your social media stuff to, you check that out, and you enjoy each other around this table. As I mentioned in the very first of this message, the one and only point that I have to make out of this text is that a church is not an independent endeavor. And even though we didn't understand the service, and I asked the pastor later what the sermon was about, and they would handwrite for us what the scripture text was going to be so that we could at least open our Bibles and kind of follow along as it was read. But we, like verse 44 said, we found togetherness and we had all things in common. Now, my prayer for us as a church, and I don't believe this is any revelation to anybody here. I think this has been something we've sought and we continue to seek. But my prayer for us is that every single person that comes in these doors finds us. I know people that have been to church their whole life and don't even know their congregations. Don't even know. Do you think it's possible for a person to be a church attender and not be a participant? Sure it is. Because it's very, very easy just to come, to sit, to go home. You're done. But to find together in a life, to find together in a church, to find together in all of our walks of life, I believe those relationships are so important. Finding participation. Finding hope together in the finished work of Christ. You know what's funny? And this just dawned on me as I began to put this sermon together. I don't even know that church's name. I don't even know the name. Now, friends, do you think if we took our church sign and we took it all down, we took the name of the church off, do you think that we would still be the church that we are? Oh, I think so. I mean, we're the First Baptist Church of Hanson. Some of you didn't know that, did you? Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's in here. The finding together. Whatever your title is, whatever your church name is. And how do we do it? Verse 42 to 47 spells it out. And it's all of us being participants together. Now, in conclusion this morning, there's a danger associated with finding together. And that danger is finding together with only those of your type. Finding together with only those of your convictions. Those in your circles. If you'll look at this text from 42 to 47, this early church had all things in common. We're talking Jews and Gentiles. Up until this time, in Jerusalem, for instance, the Gentiles, the non-Jews, were only allowed to go so far in the temple, the outer court of the Gentiles. And that's as far as they could go. If they entered into the court of the Israeli men, or even into the court of the women, they would do so in subject of death. So, very, very important. This has broken down all of the walls, and they, as a church, have experienced life together. So that's my hope, and that's my prayer. And if this morning you're visiting with us, I hope that you have found us. And I hope if God is leading you here to be a part of this family, that you will find such a togetherness here that you won't want to leave it. That you can't wait until the next time. And you know, from week to week to week, and we didn't know these people like we know you. And I know sometimes that familiarity breeds contempt, they say. Sometimes seeing each other all the time, we sort of lose the excitement of, I'll get to see you next Sunday. Well, that's how we felt about these people, that we just couldn't wait to see them the next Sunday and to see who would be there and who wouldn't be there and to see what the songs they would be singing. We knew we weren't going to understand any sermon, but whenever the song, and we both can read notes, so I would hum in the hymn book. I would follow the melody line. We both would, and hum the song, and that was kind of interesting. Haven't done that for a while. But again, we didn't need anything else other than that. That's my prayer for us. And if you haven't found a family, if you haven't found this together sense that the early church had, I just want and pray that you will find it here. And as a result of that, together with a team effort, we can see what God is up to for the next few months, years, whatever time God gives us together as a church. I want us to bow our heads. And again, I realize this sermon has been a sort of a show and tell, and I sure hope that you receive something from it. I hope that you'll think about your role in this body, in this family, and what you're doing to participate in finding together. Let's just pause for a few moments of silence, and then we'll have our last song.